Imagine you want to reverse a string. You include your libraries, you write your main method, you have all these variables. Why should it be that difficult? Nobody wants to have to type this entire program just to reverse a string. It's as simple as switching a couple letters around. Introducing the simple string manipulation programming language. I'm Lucas Talley, this is Carter Melnick. Thank you for attending our presentation. A brief outline, we're going to talk about why simple is necessary and what it does. We're going to give a brief history of simple, talk about kind of the basics of it and where it comes from. We're going to give a little code language demonstration so you can see how it works when it runs. And we're going to talk about the future prospects and plans that we have for simple.
Okay, so as you may have gleaned from the introductory example, the main reason why we wanted to write this programming language was because strings can be really annoying to manipulate and deal with in most languages. So in our experience, Java and C have been particularly large culprits of this, but you always have to, when you're learning a new programming language and you want to work with a string, you have to look up the documentation, you have to see if you're dealing with an object or if you're dealing with a character array, if there are methods already written for you that you can use or if you have to write your own. And it's just kind of a hassle of a process to have to go through every time you want to use a string, because none of this stuff is really that easy to remember either, because there's different syntax for every single language. So the goal of our program was to make these strings simpler to manipulate and easy to understand. So a brief history of our language. It was created in 2020 in the basement of some college kid, aka Lucas Talley's house. And our vision for this program, it was inspired by SQL, where you can do database queries relatively easily compared to having to write a massive program to sort through your database and get the requested information. You can kind of just give it your database and a series of functions to pipe it through in order to get your desired output. So we wanted to kind of replicate that, but with strings. So the idea was that you could take a string, some input, and apply a bunch of functions to it in a row in order to get your desired output. And so that's the core idea of simple, and we've evolved it slightly from there, but that was what we were started with.
Now for a little code demonstration. So let's hop on over to the terminal. If I want to create a simple programming or a simple file, I can just go ahead and do that. We're going to call it example.simple. I go in here. Let's say I want to, real quick, I'm going to move this. Let's say I want to reverse a string. So I'm just going to type in reverse. That's one of the functions. And I want to append that to the end of the input. And let's just check if it's a palindrome. We can just go ahead and do that. And then to run it, we run .NET, run. Let's give it an input. And let's give it example. And boom, of course it's true because when you reverse something and you put on the end, that's just what a palindrome is. So let's go ahead back into our example. Let's say now, instead of just reversing it, we want to make it uppercase. You can add to upper inside the append function. Go ahead and, sorry about that. Go ahead and fix the program and run it again. And this time, it'll return false because the uppercase and the lowercase don't match up, so it's no longer a palindrome. So you can also, the cool thing about simple is you can write programs directly in the command line. So I can write .run, I can give it an input again, and let's say this time we want to repeat the string twice and check if it contains maybe the string TA or TI. And hopefully it will contain TI because input will have the T and then the I from the first input. And I use single quotes here. I can move this back down here. I use single quotes just to differentiate the string and the program. Both work and it should work fine. Another handy feature of simple, if you run .NET run help with no program, it'll give us a list. It'll give us a example program, so with an example input and example output. And then it will give us a list of all of the built-in functions that we have. These built-in functions are kind of the core of Simple. And in future iterations and future planning, our main objective is to add more to these so users can create more robust programs and do more with their strings. Speaking of future plans, let's go ahead, hop on back to our slides and talk about our future plans.
So as Lucas mentioned, the first addition to our language would be a larger suite of built-in functions, because since user programs are limited by what built-in functions we have supplied them with, adding more built-in functions would be able to significantly grow the number of potential programs that a user could write by combining and arranging different built-in functions in the language. So the more built-in functions we have, the more variety in user functions, user programs we can create. So early on in the development cycle, we considered adding user-defined functions until we realized that a program is kind of like a user's function. So a user's function just takes our built-ins, combines them in a way to create the output that they want based on their given input. And so user-defined functions kind of just became adding more built-ins. So we ended up prioritizing adding more built-ins rather than letting users define their own functions, because they're kind of the same thing. And then another addition we wanted to add is allowing users to supply input files rather than just an input string. So for your input, if you could give it a text file or a Java or a Python file, it would be convenient if you could do something like a find and replace on a file from one language, for example, if you wanted to translate it into a different language. So maybe there are some syntax similarities between two languages and the types are different, something like that. And so you could run this input file and do a simple program that does a find and replaces all the types from your original language into all of the types from your target language.
Yep, that's all. That's about it for Simple. Thanks for watching our presentations. And thanks for enjoying our program. We hope that you use Simple in the future, and it provides a simple solution to string manipulation. Thank you.